Thanks, Khalid. I'll just move on quickly, and I think the main thread that you've heard so far is that what the Palestinians have done in the Annapolis process is try to be as reasonable as possible and as serious as possible in the negotiations. And as you heard from Khalid, for example, on the issue of the land swaps and putting forward proposals, serious technical detailed proposals on ways of resolving the conflict while meeting the interests and concerns of both sides. And I think also another aspect of what you heard is how there really hasn't been that much engagement on the Israeli side in return. So on the issue of refugees, I think the facts you have before you don't need my comment. I think that it is also obvious that there obviously can be no resolution of the conflict and no peace in the region without a just, lasting, and comprehensive resolution of the refugee issue. The Palestinian position in the negotiations has been that there's a need to affirm the rights of refugees on an individual basis, namely the right of return, as well as the need to agree on a framework for the implementation of this right. So this is consistent with the Arab Peace Initiative of a just and agreed upon solution. So on the one hand, it is important to establish the rights of the refugees, but the flexibility the Palestinian side is showing in the negotiations is in the implementation. And practically, this is, can be seen in the requirements for resolution are first of all, the recognition by Israel of its responsibility under international law for the displacement, dispossession of the refugees and the prevention of their return to their homes, and also a formal apology by Israel to the refugees in a manner consistent with international law. And of course, the recognition of the right of return in principle. And of course, then we move on to the modalities of implementation that can be negotiated and agreed upon. And then finally, of course, the issue of remedies, reparations being the principal one, restitution, and then, if not possible, then compensation. And of course an international mechanism to deal with the implementation. The obstacles are, I think, fairly obvious on the Israeli side. So far, no interest in dealing with the issue of responsibility and blatant refusal of the right of return and a refusal to admit any liability for restitution, perhaps some form of compensation, but also in an indirect manner. So that's the situation with regard to refugees. I'll move on quickly to water issues. And very quickly, the requirements in water are for an equitable and reasonable allocation of shared water resources under international law, which will allow both sides, and also on the regional scale, all the peoples in the region to benefit from the limited water resources and to expand these water resources. As it is right now, Israel consumes 4 times per capita the water that Palestinians do, and so obviously we are nowhere near the equitable and reasonable allocation. When it comes to negotiations, rather than dealing with the issue of water from the basis of international law and allocation based on international law, the Israelis wish to perpetuate the present paradigm, which is, having the inequality in place, but then finding other ways of supplying the Palestinians with water, such as desalination plants that would, of course, fall under Israeli control and would be subject to higher expenses and would not be in accordance with international law. So again, this is the chart showing the current per capita per day consumption of water. I think it speaks for itself. Move on to an area that I'm more familiar with, the security negotiations. Now, what we have currently is particularly in security, it's relevant to point out that there are 2 distinctly different paradigms or regimes that apply. One is the one we're under right now, which is the occupation. So the Oslo agreements did not change the fact that there's an Israeli military occupation, which means whatever we're doing in terms of security reform under the roadmap is still subject to the rules and and the existence of an overriding Israeli military presence in the West Bank, and of course Gaza. What we're trying to negotiate in permanent status, rather, is a situation where you have two sovereign states, and they have mutual security obligations toward one another. So what you'll note from my presentation now is the Israeli failure to make that distinction. The Israeli thinking is